ACE Prep Interoperability. What is the advantage of opening registry files using Registry Viewer within a case in FTK? And the answer, a more detailed view is available than the FTK default view. Also, registry reports generated in Registry Viewer can be linked to the FTK report. Which registry files will display content in an HTML table in FTK using default processing? And the answer, the SEM file will show user account information, the software file will show installation information such as registered organization, registered owner, and the system file will show time zone information. What is the purpose of the registry reports processing option in FTK? And the answer, it auto-processes registry summary reports. File signature analysis must be selected in order to use that function, however, and only registry summary report files in the designated directory are run. And they can be incorporated into the FTK report as well. Let's take a look at some of the registry integration into FTK. In FTK, let's make our way to the Overview tab in order to view some of the registry files. We'll find those under File Category, OS File System Files, and then in the container called Windows NT Registry. And as we mentioned, there are several registry files that provide a default view within FTK. And we'll start with the System Registry file. And as you see in the System Registry file, when it's being viewed in FTK in the Natural tab, you get an HTML table view of just the key that contains the time zone information. And we can see things like this, the control set that's used, the time zone bias, the active time bias, and the actual name of the time zone that's being used. Now, if I launch Registry Viewer from FTK to look at that same system file, we'll see that there's a number of other areas that are not captured by this default view in FTK. One of those would be right at the root, there are mounted devices. So the advantage of launching within FTK, launching Registry Viewer to mount a file, is that I can add different keys, different areas within this file to my report, and I'll just grab a couple here. The computer name key would be a good one to add. And I can add those to my report. So I've added two different areas to my report so far, and that will be enough just to demonstrate the concept. So at that point, I'd follow through and create a report and give this a name, System File Details, something like that. And I can also, if I want to give this a different file name than the default file system name that just uses the name of the registry file, I could do that as well. And so I'll create my report. Now that I've created my report, generated my report, then in FTK, I can go to my report menu. And when I go to the registry selections area of my report, now I have two options available to me as far as registry files go. If below I choose the checkbox for the system registry file, then I would simply choose whichever ones are available in my case, and here I'm going to get just the preliminary type of view that I would get in FTK. Above here, since I just finished generating a more customized report in Registry Viewer, then I will get those reports included when I check this option. So then I'll finish out creating my report. And now when I view my report, I go to the section in my report for Registry Viewer Reports, and there I have System File Details. So this is the customized report that I generated within Registry Viewer after launching it from within FTK. So I would get more detailed information from the mounted devices key, and I also included another key in here as well for computer name. So I would get that information as opposed to just the basic system registry file view parsed out automatically in FTK that's shown here. Also, just to follow through with the other parts of the question, if I highlight the SAM file in FTK, you can see the user account information. Part of that file is automatically displayed in FTK for me. And the software file displays automatically the install information from Windows. And regarding the automatic processing of summary reports, that is available upon initial case creation. So here I am creating a new case, and I'm in the evidence processing window. When I turn on the registry reports option, then there's a little browse button, and it will point to the summary report location where I have templates already created. And so whatever summary reports are in that directory will be automatically processed in FTK as the case is processed. Which applications can be launched from within FTK? And the answer: FTK Imager, Registry Viewer, PRTK, License Manager, and the Language Selector. Very simply, from within FTK, I can go to the Tools menu, down to Other Applications, and there are my choices for launching other applications from within FTK. And there's an example launching Imager. What formats of hash sets can be incorporated into FTK? And the answer, and these answers, by the way, are in the user guide for FTK. The Access Data Hash Database with a .hdb file extension, an Imager hash list, comma-separated type file extension, the FTK Copy Special Hash List, which creates a tab delimited format. The hash set from HashKeeper application can be HKE, HKT, .txt. And the NSRL, National Software Reference Library hash list. You can incorporate tab delimited files and a .hash file format. And of course, you can incorporate FTK's own KFF, known file filter. Now, besides the questions that we've addressed, we'd also like to cover some specific knowledge points. And the first of those is concerning EXIF information. So make sure you know how to access EXIF information within a graphic file for FTK. And let's take a look at that. In FTK, on the Overview tab under File Category, we have, of course, a container for graphics, but then there's a further breakdown. Under Raster Graphics, we have JPEGs, but we also have a container called JPEG EXIF. And these are JPEG files that contain EXIF information, extra metadata about the files. To view that metadata, by just highlighting the file's name, we can make our way to the Properties tab at the bottom of the File Content Viewer, and there will be a dedicated section for EXIF information, settings about the camera, time and date information, etc. Now, the other alternative is that if we view this same file in the Explore tab, then it will show up in the tree because now FTK artificially has broken out that EXIF information into a separate sub-item to make this easier to bookmark. So those are the two ways that you can get to EXIF information for graphic files. Another knowledge point involves filter usage. Using the filter manager to apply multiple filters within FTK. Let's take a look at that in the tool. For this demonstration, I'll start in the Overview tab. And on the Overview tab, I want to list all my files in the case, so I'll click on my file category container. And that gives me 5,061 files to view. So if I want to filter those by using the Filter Manager, I click on the Filter Manager button, and it brings up the Filter Manager window, which only shows me existing filters in my case. So I want to create a couple of filtered views, and I'll do that by choosing some existing filters. The first one will be Include Email Attachments, and I'll go to my Email Attachments filter, and here I have two areas. I have an Include area and an Exclude area. Since I want to view email attachments, I'll use the double arrows to move that into the Include area. And then at the same time, I want my filter to exclude or not show graphics. So I'll locate the graphics filter in my list, graphic files filter, and I don't want to show graphics, so I'll move that into the bottom exclude area. Now once I've done that, I can simply click my Apply button to see the results of my filter. I apply. Notice that when my filter is applied, I have a yellow background in my file list just to remind me that I do have a filter running. And also notice in the drop-down menu for filters, it now says Compound. And when I apply that filter, that combination of excluding graphics but including email attachments, I have a total of 23 items. Another knowledge point would be to run a regular expression and view the results. Let's take a look at how to do that in the tool as well. In FTK, to run a regular expression, I need to go to the Live Search tab. Within the Live Search tab, I need to click on the Pattern tab. And to just run an existing regular expression, I go to the white drop-down menu and choose my regular expression. In this case, I'll choose a US phone number. It populates the window with that expression. I'll click my Add button to move it into the window where I'm actually going to perform my search, and click my Search button. Since this is a live search type function, it does take time to actually run through the data and to do the search. So depending on what your target is and how large your data is, could take a while. In this case, we had a very small piece of data, so we're finished quickly. And then you simply expand the results to look at the individual hits. And we'll just pick a quick example to show you. You highlight an individual hit and just view the results in their context to see if that meets your search criteria. And that's all you do to run a regular expression and view the results. Another knowledge point concerns email. Make sure you know how to recognize files which are email attachments. So let's take a look at that also in the tool. In our scenario in FTK, let's assume that you just encounter a file in your travels, your forensic travels, which is a graphic file that happens to be attached to an email. How would you recognize it as such? So for this example, we'll be in the Graphics tab. I've quick picked all the graphics in my case so that they do appear in the thumbnails and in the file list below. So in the file list below, I want to do a type down search for a file that begins with a specific file name, and this one will begin with CART. And so I've located this file here. And I need to be able to recognize when a file is an email attachment. And there's a couple of ways to do so. Notice that In this case, we actually have two files with the same file name. If I look at the second file, I can see that by looking at the full path of the file, this is just a file within a My Pictures directory within My Documents of the user Frodo Baggins. However, the first occurrence of that file, looking at the path, you can see some references to mail and actually some other references which clue you in, meaning a email address, also the name of a subject of an email as well shows up there, which should sort of tip you off there. Now, you can also verify this by going to the File Status container on the Overview tab. So I'll go to Overview, File Status, and under File Status there is an Email Attachments container. And again, if we search for that same file, do a type down for it, you can see that that very same file with that very same path does show up here. So it does show up as an email attachment as well. Then lastly, I might also check by seeing if I can view this file in the Email tab, which is available to me here. So once again, I go to the Email tab. Here's that file, and I can see that it is an attachment to an email message. Our next knowledge point involves identification of file types. Make sure that you know how to identify the true type of a file that has an incorrect file extension. And once again, let's go and take a look at that in the tool in FTK. And for our example here in FTK, let's go to the Overview tab, and under File Status, there is a container called Bad Extensions, which lists all the files that have a file extension which does not match the actual type of the file. So for our demonstration, I'll do a type down for a file that begins with the word PASS, and I have this file called password_proc (1).htm. One clue that should jump out at you is that the icon that FTK assigns to that file is that of a graphic icon. And then to further verify that, if I go over to the category column, I can see that FTK recognizes this file as a JPEG. And then if I wanted further verification, I could switch from the natural view to the hex view and see indeed this is not an HTML file, but you can see the header very clearly there for a JPEG file. Lastly, here are a few miscellaneous knowledge points to be aware of. You can find this information in the FTK User's Guide. Also, you can look at the release notes of FTK5 for some of these new features such as the screen capture, photo DNA, language identification, and sending files directly to PRTK. Capturing RAM, just be aware that if you're capturing RAM using Imager, that you have to run Imager on that computer, and in doing so, that changes certainly can occur to the media while you're running that. Make sure you're also aware of the screen capture function that's available within Visualization and also within the Social Analyzer 2, which is launched from Visualization. That information again is in the release notes and the user guide for FTK5. Be aware of the basic functions of photo DNA, being that it's a way to identify files that are similar visually but not exactly the same, where an MD5 hash would miss the fact that they are related to each other. Language identification, make sure that you're familiar with that function in FTK, that there is both a basic and an extended version, an option in your processes. You can choose some basic language identifications about 6, 7, 8 languages, and then there's an extended version which is 67 languages. And also be aware that if there are multiple languages, only the first language that's encountered will be counted. And the function analyzes documents and only the first 2 pages of those documents. And then lastly, be aware of the new FTK5 feature to directly send files from FTK to PRTK for decryption. And one of the things to be aware along with that is if you do that, that PRTK will launch if it's not already running, and it will use the profile that is currently designated as the default profile. So you would need to make sure that you have the correct profile already set up and ready to go.